building too much custom things around a product that you're trying to standardize is also it's a rabbit hole. You don't want to go down the rabbit hole because in the end it will come back to bite you in the ass, and that's something that we realized. What I wished I would have done in the past is hire an experienced VP sales faster. It's always a bad idea to be too opportunistic, because actually what you're doing is you're not onboarding annual recurring revenue, you're onboarding churn, but you just don't realize it yet.
Good morning, Niels, and welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thanks. Well, I'm doing fine actually. It's my birthday today. I'm on the third tram, as they say. So yeah, 30 years old now.
Wow!
Doesn't feel any different than yesterday, but I'm heading into a fun weekend, I guess.
That's usually the case indeed. You don't really feel the difference, but still, it's kind of a milestone, right? Becoming 30. It's not something that you do every day.
Yeah, finally maturing. It's really a milestone. Yeah.
But when you told me you became 30 today, I was kind of impressed because I thought you were actually way more ahead in terms of age. Maybe because you are the CEO of Metamaze, and with that comes an image of someone with a certain age. But so I think it's going to be interesting for the conversation of today to actually also kind of understand where you come from, where you started. And also maybe for the younger audience of the podcast, maybe they also ambition someday to become, the CEO of an impressive scale-up such as Metamaze. So it could be interesting to also kind of, get your personal story of this. And so maybe just to start off with this conversation, can you maybe just introduce yourself a bit, give a little bit of background, where you come from, what have you done, what have you studied, and then how it led to your position now at Metamaze.
Yeah, sure. It's a bit of a long story, so I'll try to keep it short and crisp. In high school, I studied economics, mathematics, and afterwards, actually, my plan for my entire life actually was to become a pilot. Something completely different. I want to become a commercial pilot, but I have some medical issues with my eyes and then my back. Something is wrong, so that was not an option. But I didn't have a plan B at the time. So after high school, I needed to decide real quick what I wanted to do. Then I was advised by my teachers at the time to go to the university and go for commercial engineering education. After a few months, I stopped. The science part of the training or of the program was not my thing. I stopped, started working just like very at the basics in a contact center, actually handling complaints of customers in a logistics distribution context. And then I got stuck over there. So I planned to go back to university to go study applied economics, but I didn't do so because they convinced me to stay and they wanted to pay my education as well, like in a combination working and studying. That's what I did. So I started at the age of 18 in a contact center handling complaints, also involved in commercial side of things of that business at the time. So that was really the basics. And I think it helped me quite well in getting to where I am today, because I really started in handling like the least pleasant, I'm going to say it in a more beautiful way, the least pleasant phone calls and fixing things for customers. And then I moved in my career towards a more sales-oriented job, account manager, key account manager, sales manager. So first in a logistics context, distribution, then I moved to the nuclear industry. I worked for Engie. So completely different again, but also in a commercial job or department. And then in 2017, I actually stepped away from the corporate life because both companies before were corporates. And I stepped into the startup scale-up scene at Faction because I knew the founder pretty well. And he convinced me to come work for Faction and try to sell AI machine learning projects. Which was very difficult, by the way, but I think we managed quite well. Faction has like a very nice.
How many years ago was that with Faction?
So that's 2017. So that's what is it? 5 years and a bit.
Okay.
That I moved from corporate life to startup life, AI scene, and Faction. Also in a commercial role again, selling projects, AI machine learning consulting, and that was also the basics actually are the basis for Metamaze, because what we did at Faction, or what Faction is still doing, is bespoke projects. So they try to solve all types of business cases and problems that companies have by applying AI and machine learning, by actually operationalizing AI and machine learning. And in 2019, AXA Bank came to Faction and to a lot of other companies as well. But they launched a tender actually to solve a problem related to interpretation of documents, automatic interpretation of documents in the credit department. So for all credits or all loans that you apply as a consumer, you need to send in a lot of documentation. And they were still doing it manually, so they had a team of credit analysts that were, instead of advising customers and going in dialogues and actually try to add value to the customer that is applying for the loan, they were more focused on getting the paperwork done and interpreting the documents, and they were looking for a solution. We won the tender with Faction, and we didn't know it at the time, but that was the first customer of what later became Metamaze. It had the name ADP, Automated Document Processing, which is very original. Was the first working title of the platform that we have today. And then in 2019 and then 2020, we had a lot of other discussions. So the project at AXA was ongoing. We were developing the solution that they asked for. But we spoke to a lot of other companies in different industries, finance, but also outside of finance. And we noticed that there are a lot of companies are struggling with the same interpretation of documents, processing.
And ultimately, that's a generic problem, right? It
Yeah,
can be implemented into different departments, different industries.
Exactly. So we started with one case, but we noticed that it can be implemented everywhere, in every industry, in every department, in every company, as long as you have a size or a volume that makes it worthwhile to investigate it. And that's actually the point where we decided, okay, this is bigger than the AXA project. This is something that we can actually scale and put into a separate venture, and that's what we did in October 2020. So when we launched Metamaze as a spin-off of Faction, as a completely separate company. That's also when I decided, together with Jos and a few other colleagues, so Jos is our CTO, also worked for Faction since 2017. So since the early days, and we decided, okay, let's focus together on building Metamaze into a great venture with nice growth metrics, and let's build a unicorn. Actually, that's what we said to each other when we started.
Hell yeah, definitely. All right, so yeah, it's indeed a spin-off coming from Faction. So actually, you kind of, I mean, it is fair to say that you're kind of the founding partner of Metamaze, right?
Yeah, together with
there from the beginning, and
we've been there from the beginning. So both Jos and myself, but also of course the founders of Faction are still involved, not on our operational day-to-day level, but they're in our boards, and of course they advise us in all types of topics where we have questions or unsure what to do. And that's not only the founders, but we've gathered like a very experienced veteran board of directors, also Alex Brabers, Jeroen van Gotsenhoven, with quite nice track record, actually, a lot of experience. We've gathered them around us because for us, we are, if you say that we're founders, both Jos and myself are first-time founders. We have been active in the scale-up startup scene for a few years now, but actually running it yourself and doing everything yourself and making your own decisions was the first time for us. So we thought it was important to gather experienced people around us, and that's what we did. So together with the founders of Faction, but also other people that are involved now.
Definitely a golden advice. But it's great you already have give a little bit of background of the Metamaze story, because that's definitely something I want to dive in today, because you have gotten a lot of press, of media eyeballs recently. You have been elected or voted the Tech Startup of the Year 2022, and it's probably for a reason. And so I'm kind of curious, to dive a little bit on that. Maybe just start by explaining what makes Metamaze so unique, and maybe also try to visualize what you do concretely, because I know it's about documenting, document processing, and stuff that being automated and makes it easier for the end user. But what does that mean concretely? How can you try to visualize it?
Mm-hmm. I'll give a few examples. I'll start with our pioneering customer, AXA. I spoke about it already. As a consumer, at least for myself, I speak for myself, but I think for most of the consumers that are 30 plus, have applied for a loan to buy a house, to buy a car, whatever. Then when you apply for a loan, the bank will ask you, send in your pay slips, send in your last tax declaration, send in the contract of the house that you bought, and a lot of other documents that you need to provide to prove to the bank that you're eligible for the loan, that you're able to pay it back, and that they can actually give you money without too much of a risk. Now, the fact that you send this data, which is unstructured because it's all hidden in documents or even emails sometimes, it's hidden, it's not binary, makes or made that people needed to look at these documents and needed to actually read them and interpret them. And in some cases, even type over the information into the software that they're using to manage these credit applications before they can actually make a decision, should we grant a loan or not? And this process is very time consuming. It's non-value adding. You might even consider it to be boring work because it's very repetitive. And that's the problem that they had. And what we do now, after implementation of a solution, I'll go into the solution and what makes it different from others afterwards. But what we do now, after the implementation at AXA, actually all the documents that consumers send in related to their application are being pushed to our software, and we automatically detect the information that they need. So for example, for a payslip, we're automatically going to extract the salary, the date of the payslip, the employee number or identification, the employer name, etc., etc. So all the information that you used to extract manually as a credit analyst, type over into a system, and then use that data to base your decision on, the extraction part of it is what we automate. So documents are being uploaded by consumers. We extract the data, and we're going to pre-fill the software of the analysts with all the information that we've found. So he or she just needs to look at the information and then decide, together with probably a committee or like experts, should we grant a loan or not? But the manual data extraction and typing over data part is eliminated by implementing a Metamaze. And that makes that they can just handle more loan applications in a shorter time frame than they used to do in the past. Because the human part or the data interpretation part was actually the part that was consuming or taking up most of their time. A very time-consuming task.
Yeah. So to understand it better, the technology is definitely generic. I mean, you can use it to different processes, but still the ultimate use of it needs to be custom to the process, right? I can imagine you cannot just deploy the technology on any process and just hope it will work. You still have to do manual process adaptation.
There's indeed like an implementation phase. So what we have actually is a generic platform, so you can implement it in any industry, in any department for any use case. You have a generic platform, but we give all the technology and all the features for our customers to be able to train their own AI models for their own use case. And that's immediately what differentiates us. If you look at other solutions out there, you actually have two different approaches. First of all, you have the AI approaches, but we noticed that most of them are what we call narrow technologies. So there are software solutions that use AI and machine learning to automate one use case, one document type, one specific case. And the easiest example to understand is invoices. So everyone is handling invoices. Everyone receives invoices, unfortunately, and you need to put them in your accounting system and pay them. And there are a lot of softwares out there where you can just upload your invoice and he will say to you, you have to pay this amount to this supplier. This is the account number to transfer the money, etc. But it's only one invoice. It's one use case, so it doesn't scale. And as a company, you have a lot of different use cases in your or different processes where you could apply this. And this means if you go for these narrow technologies, that you need to implement 10, 20, 50, maybe 100 different narrow use case solutions, which is not scalable. You don't want to maintain that from a procurement perspective. Yeah, it's a nightmare. So that's one thing. And on the other hand, you had the platform approaches where you could actually implement where you could use the technology for any use case that you have. But typically they were not AI driven or machine learning driven. They were old technology, as we call them. So they just use like templates where you can configure like if this template is rule based. And so it's not scalable, it's not generalizable. So you have either an AI approach, which is accurate and performing, but you have the narrow technology, so you need a different technology for every use case that you have, or you have the platform approach, but then you don't use AI, it's not scalable, it doesn't generalize. So that's also something you don't want. And what we did at Metamaze is we combined both. So we build a platform that you can use for any use case, and it's AI driven, so it generalizes and it scales. And on top of that, we made it business oriented. Because in the past, we talked to a lot of banks and they were already working on intelligent document processing cases, but they were doing it with their data science team, with their machine learning team. So what they were doing is in the code, they were building a solution, they were training algorithms, adapting the parameters, etc. But it were the machine learning engineers or the data scientists that were in the lead to do so. while actually it is the business that is having the problem, because the business doesn't have enough resources to process the documents, needs them to be processed faster, etc., etc. So we bring this technology to the business user as well. To use Metamaze, you don't need to be an engineer, you don't need to be a data scientist, you don't need any coding skills. You can just, by clicking, dragging, dropping, train an AI model for your use case and start automating. And that's actually what we do.
No, love it. I think we established why you guys has been voted as the tops, what was it again? The tech startup of the year 2022.
Exactly.
Maybe let's talk now about the sales engine or the commercial engine behind it, because that's definitely something that our audience will find interesting. And I think your case is very particular, because you started off with the tender of AXA that you guys won, and so from there you had a first client. But back then, I suppose it was a very custom solution, and you still had to transform then that solution to a SaaS, solution as well, that you can scale then to other companies. But then I suppose you had that phase where you had to transform that one solution to something more scalable. But then how did you go and try to find new clients?
Well, I think there are very distinct phases in how we evolved as a sales team or as a sales machine. In the very first months, it was me and Jules Sansmans, who was also one of the first employees of Metamaze, who also joined coming from Faction. How did we do sales in the beginning? It was like just the old-fashioned way, picking up the phone and try calling everyone in Belgium who might be able or might have used in our solution. We didn't have any process. We didn't have a lot of sales collateral, actually. We just had the story of what we did or are doing at AXA. And we tried to convince them based on an ideal situation, based on storytelling, and try to convince them that way. And in the beginning, that worked pretty well. We were fairly quickly able to onboard a few new customers.
What did you focus on in terms of business?
In the beginning, we didn't have any focus. Again, we evolved. We learned a lot over the first 1.5 years in existence. So there was no focus. We just thought, who could potentially use our technology, no matter the industry, no matter the persona in the company. We just called everyone, basically.
Wow!
It had proven to be a wrong tactic, but I'll come to that later. So we managed fairly quickly to find new customers in different industries. So I think our second customer was a Singapore-based trade finance fund, which is also finance located. So that's still a bit close to what our focus is today. But then our third customer was a manufacturing company. So they manufacture bricks, so stone bricks, completely different. Our third company was an industrial company in the compressor techniques and vacuum techniques. So we went in all directions, actually, which was good because it allowed us to give or to gather feedback and to gather a bit of experience into the different sales cycles in different industries, how everyone was thinking about our technology, how innovative some industries are or are not. So it was good that we did it that way after all, but I can tell you that it wasn't very efficient and effective. Because wasted a lot of time as well.
Sorry to interrupt you, because were you trying to just find new clients to just generate new business and just try to take off with Metamaze, or were you really trying to validate some hypothesis? Were you really searching for answers to certain questions, or were you just trying to get the business up and running?
No, I think in the first phase, so important to mention, when we were founded in 2020, we also raised 1 million in pre-seed, actually to fund the growth of the company and the first stages. And up until the summer of 2021, we were still validating our product market fit. We thought from the beginning that we had it, but we were still trying to find the actual validation that we had product market fit. So the first few months until summer 2021, it was more about validation and not specifically about growth yet. We were trying to find the industries that are actually the most receptive for our technology, where we could grow the fastest, and etc. So onboarding logos was more important at the time than onboarding a lot of revenue or onboarding like the big whales. Of course, we were always looking for whales, but as a startup that is existing for a few months, that's not so easy. And that was why we went a bit in all directions, because we just want validation of what we were doing, that it was the right strategy or the right approach actually.
All right, and so you said earlier that just going in the wild and just call everyone, every type of persona from every type of industry was perhaps not the best strategy to implement. And can you maybe explain why that was?
Well, I think it wasn't the best, but at the time I don't think we had another option, because we weren't sure about the industries yet. We knew that we had a bank, like a rather big bank, as our first customer. So we, of course, had a hunch that financial services industry would be a big one for us. But as a company that has one customer and that is existing for a few weeks, it's not easy to fairly quickly onboard other banks. So we didn't have a lot of options at the time. Of course, ideally, we would have chosen an industry, a vertical, or even a use case specifically where we would be able to focus on, and then things might have gone faster. But I think that's always, like, in retrospect, you can always say the same, but when you're actually at that time, it's just about the groundwork and just calling everyone and see when and where it sticks. And that's what we did. Now, after this phase of product market fit or the validation, so somewhere around summer 2021, we had a lot of positive feedback. We were able to onboard a few new customers. I think at the time we had somewhere around 15 to 20 customers, paying licenses. Okay. And knowing that we focus on the bigger companies, so we're not SME oriented, we're focusing on the corporates and the enterprises. That's actually pretty good, considering that we had two salespeople, me and then Joel at the time, and not a lot of sales collateral, not a lot of experience, not a lot of track record. So we were fairly pleased with the results. We had a lot of positive feedback from partners as well, because we have a very outspoken indirect, so channel sales is very important for us and will be even more important in the coming years. But a lot of positive feedback from partners as well, and that's the point where we knew, like, okay, we have this product market fit, we had validation. Now it's time to shift gears, and we did our second fundraise. We raised 2.2 million in our seed round, and then we actually started accelerating on sales and go to market. And that's also the time when we hired additional salespeople, additional sales roles. And end of 2021, we hired a VP sales to become more mature, more professional than we were in the beginning. And that's actually when we started to see the snowball effect and the acceleration of our go-to-market machine. We were better, or getting better. We still have work to do, but we're getting better in defining our ICP, who we need to call within the company, what the use cases are that we can tackle and are difficult to tackle for us, so what we shouldn't focus on. And that is really like the evolution that we're going through still today, and I think we're making good progress, but still there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, of course. I have a bunch of questions for you now, because obviously when you have to raise some capital, we don't expect you to have perfect sales processes and systems in place that can predict the sales that you will close in the coming months, coming year. But still, you have to. Sales has an important role when it comes to raise some new capital, right? So how important was it to you? What was your, when you look back at that, what was the importance of the sales back then?
I think the importance of sales in our first two rounds, well, in the beginning, it was close to zero, of course, because we were just being incorporated, and then we raised the 1 million from a business angel that just believed in us, and of course we had AXA as proof that we can convince a big bank and that there are business cases. For the seed round, what was most important was I would say the growth, not specifically the fact that we had like a very well-oiled sales machine yet, because that was what we would be building with the means coming out of the seed round, but the fact that we were able to demonstrate that we were able to onboard new customers, nice logos, nice companies in different industries, and not only with two salespeople, two sales guys, and a very limited amount of collateral and tools and resources. That was what we needed to prove at that time. Now, going towards a Series A that is planned for early next year, the predictability and the machine aspect of our sales team is becoming more important. We need to indeed be able to demonstrate through numbers our growth, and also how we forecast our growth for the coming months, quarters, and years. to demonstrate that it was not a lucky shot, or that we're not just having a few lucky shots out there, but we need to keep it going, and we need to be able to predict it better. And that's so now in this phase going towards the Series A, I believe it's way more important to have this predictability and these processes in place than it was in our seed round or in our seed phase.
Yeah, so the pre-seed was more to have initial funding to really set up that sales engine, and then for the next round, it will be more to really scale everything that you have been built between those two rounds.
Yeah, actually, it's so we had two phases. So the pre-seed was more R&D, product development, to go from this AXA solution that we built, this bespoke solution, to a generic solution that we could market. And then the seed round in the summer 2021, that was to build a sales machine, which we have built right now. Continue on building, of course, but we have built a good foundation to do so. And now this Series A for us will be to, after we've proven that we could build this scalable sales machine in Belgium or in the Benelux. So the Series A or post Series A will be international expansion and replicating what we've done in the Benelux. That's the goal.
Yeah, I love that ambition. So when you have that first paycheck that's coming in, you have that big goal, and so you know that it's very important to set up the pieces right so that you can indeed make those sales happen. But so what's then the first thing that for you was super important to have it right from the beginning?
Do I need to say the reality, or should I put it in in retrospect?
Maybe
if
what
I could do it
you
over
wish
again?
that happens, and then ultimately, the reality could be interesting.
What I wished I would have done in the past is hire an experienced VP sales faster. I think it's something where there's a lot of debate going on when should you hire a VP sales, but I think you should do it, or we should have done it sooner. I don't know if you can really pinpoint on a timing, but we should have done it sooner because we haven't. And what happened is we've started onboarding sales colleagues first. So I was like the sales manager, the VP sales, and I was doing sales myself as well.
Yeah, because you were a VP of sales, kind of in previous companies, right? So you kind of had that experience, but you were not in the position to do it then because you were already too busy. And that's why you should hire another one, or?
No, I'm always very honest and transparent. I was a VP sales indeed in the previous company, but the sales team was smaller. The business was different. The business dynamics were different. It was not a SaaS context, but it was a consulting context. It was we sold projects, and it's completely different. And if you're building a sales machine for a SaaS company, you really need to build this machine with processes, and it needs to be well oiled, and it needs to be high velocity. And in a consulting or project context, that's really different because every sales cycle is different. While in a SaaS context, you try to standardize every sales cycle as much as possible. You won't always be able to do so, but you want to standardize it. So I think I just realized after summer 2021, when we hired new salespeople, that I just wasn't a good sales manager anymore, or I might never have been for this context or for these dynamics. And we needed one that was someone that knew how to build this engine, someone that could dedicate time on coaching as well of the new employees. Because actually what happened is I was both a sales guy and a sales manager, and I also had some other administration stuff to do, finance. Right. Of course, but at the time it was still rather limited because we were small, but I just didn't have enough time to focus also on coaching, guiding, maybe even mentoring the new salespeople that were onboarded. And that's really one of the big learnings that I have is that you need to dedicate time to it. Because I think I'm a pretty good sales guy to sell Metamaze because I have the origin story. I have this storytelling that I have from the very beginning, coming from Faction, onboarding AXA as a first customer, the entire sales cycle of AXA, I breathe it because I lived it. But you can't expect from new people that they have the same, they can have the same passion, but they don't have the same background to tell it as vivid as I can. I think I can tell it. So you need to dedicate time to these new sales people to train them, to feed them with stories and fun stories and interesting fun facts, so that they're able to replicate it as well. And because I was also involved in sales and in a lot of other topics, but mainly in sales, there was a time that I became a bottleneck because I didn't spend a lot of time on the salespeople. meaning that they were, and that's not blaming it, it's just looking at myself there, but they were not as productive as I was, because I was bringing in most of the deals because I had like this background and this storytelling, etc. So I couldn't really decide what to do, in a sense, like, should I stop selling myself and dedicate my time to the salespeople, but that's impacting growth on the short term, or should I continue closing deals or hunting deals and try to close deals and do that and try to make the team as self-starting as possible and try to let them figure it out themselves. And I did that for way too long, because it was always a trade-off. Should I let go of the short-term deal intake because I should drop it, or should I focus on the long term? And that was something I waited with for way too long, actually. And that's why I say that I wish I would have hired a VP sales sooner. So what we're doing right now, so he could focus on the team, building the process, putting in place an actual machine, coaching the team members, and trying to get them up to a level that I actually am not a bottleneck anymore. And that's where we are right now. By the way, yeah, I'm the one and only sales guy who missed his target last quarter. So that's it was very sad to hear from me, or to see that I missed my target. But actually, at the same time, it was also a very good sign that I am no longer the bottleneck, because we can continue the growth without me having to be like in the deals full time to ensure it. So
you're detaching yourself from that responsibility, and I agree. From a certain point in time, you cannot always be responsible or co-responsible for the sales. But I think you had two great lessons there. The first one being, indeed, you have to be able to focus enough time on the sales team, being able to mentor, to coach them, to make sure that they have everything they need to be successful. But then the second one, and I think that is maybe a very important one as well, is that it's not because you have been a VP of sales in the past that you can be a successful VP of sales in this context. And context is everything. And I think sometimes as an ex-VP of sales, you might have a certain ego of, I can do it myself. But I think this is, it kind of it can be an inspiration for many people. I think that, yes, maybe it's good to look into a mirror, to look at the bigger picture and see what is your role within the company, and then try to define what that means for you.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I think I wouldn't go back to being a VP sales, or at least not in our company, because I'm just not the best or the most suitable guy for that. Cedric, we hired Cedric as a VP sales, coming from Showpads. He has lived and experienced their growth story from the beginning. So he knows what to do. He knows which buttons to push, and you just need to realize that you can't be the best in everything, or sometimes you're just not the best in anything. But leaving that aside, I think that's something we should have done sooner, and that's valid for everything, by the way. Yeah? There will be a time where I'm not the best CEO anymore, and I'm fairly realistic on that level as well, and that's fine. You just need to realize it soon enough, and I think that's thing. There's a third lesson that I want to add, and that's also the team. And that's a very cliche, of course, but in terms of hiring of our sales team, we've tried several things. Very experienced people, like coming from Salesforce, coming from Oracle, like the target hitters of these big tech companies, versus someone coming from school, but really eager, really ambitious, really has this hunch, like I'm going to prove myself. And again, it's a cliche, but from now on, we will always choose mentality and ambition and I would say cultural fit above experience level or the number of years that you have been selling a solution. And the only reason why we're here in terms of sales, but actually in terms of the entire company, but specifically for sales, is because of the sales team that we have in place right now. They're go-getters, they're no nonsense. They pick up the phone, they follow the process, and they execute. And that's really the differentiating aspect.
Yeah, and I think if you have that culture with similar values, similar vision, philosophy, you create an ecosystem of people pushing each other towards a direction where everybody wants to go. So I can imagine that exactly. that is something that kind of happened with you guys.
Exactly.
Now, when All right. So a first lesson was, of course, to hire a VP of sales in the first place. But then actually, when you really started to build up that sales machine, or maybe that's actually the question I should ask Cedric, but I will ask you for now. What was the first thing that you thought? All right, that is very important. Is it about recruitment? Is it about having the right processes in place? Is it about having the right account list into place? Is it what is it? The first thing that you think is super important so that you can really start and start to scale? Or maybe even if you can add to that, what's the process? Because you need all of that, but maybe what's the right order to act on those?
I think step one is the team, the hiring, the recruitment of the right people in the right position, and also making a distinction between the right positions or the positions that you need to fill to actually scale. In the past, we just had account executives. We called it business development managers. We were not into the SaaS terminology yet in the beginning. Again, I proved that I'm not the best SaaS VP sales. But so we had salespeople, and they were just doing everything. So the lead generation, the cold calling, they were writing their own LinkedIn posts or social media posts. They were following up on meetings, writing proposals, contract negotiations. They were doing everything. But that made that you had like this a lot of fluctuations into your daily, I would say, daily job. Being there were weeks that you needed to cold call because your calendar was empty, and then there were weeks that you were like really swamped in meetings and you needed still to write proposals and review contracts, etc. Because you always had lead generation, a lot of leads, and then you need to follow up on them, and then all the leads were gone or closed, hopefully, but either gone or closed, and you need to start calling again. So hiring of the right positions, being a BDR or an SDR, having an account executive, and then in a later stage, the customer success manager who follows up on the existing customers. I think for me, that was step one. Mm-hmm. Then, thanks to the experience and the feedback that you get from that team, defining your focus. So who is your ICP? Who do you want to call? And which cases are you putting in the market? For me, then the third thing is building the tools and the collateral to do that. So you have your team, you know who you're going to call or you're going to approach. Then building like very focused slide decks, ebooks, whatever, more marketing or sales collateral. Mm-hmm. And then the final thing is then putting in place the processes based on experience. Because you can have a theoretical process from a book that says that you need to follow this sequence, and then you need to call him twice, and then you need to send him an ebook, and then you need to do this and that. But actually, I believe that every industry, every company, or every technology that you're selling has a different angle to it. So I think you need to always adapt these theories to the real world that you are working in. So processes for me come last. Doesn't mean that they're less important, but they come last because you need to adapt them to the reality that you're in. Mm-hmm.
And still, a lot has to be defined also when you are in a startup scale-up scene, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's always trial and error. We modified our ICP a few times over the last 15 to 20 months, and that's fine. And then you need to follow with the process that adapts as well. And then maybe as a last step, which I haven't mentioned, but then the metrics, following up on everything, measuring, and then improving, taking action when needed. I think that's the different steps that we've gone through so far.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that now you're also looking into working with partners as an additional channel. What's your vision or what's your experience on that, and how do you think that will kind of influence the future growth of Metamaze?
For us, it's going to be very important to have partners for two main reasons, actually three. Two of them are go-to-market related. We just don't have unlimited resources, so we can't hire 100 FTEs in sales. So if we want to grow fast, we need extensions of the sales team. And no better way to do this than to onboard partners who are also willing to co-sell your solution, to bring your technology to the market. Because we are, for example, working together with like consulting companies such as Capgemini, such as DXC, KPMG, etc. If you can, in the blink of an eye, onboard 100 additional sales guys that are not full-time but actually pushing your solution in the market, that's of course invaluable. You can't put a value on that. It's amazing. And also the sales cycles typically are a bit faster. They're less easy to control from our side, but they're typically faster because these consulting companies are already active at a specific customer site or
Yeah, they have their
customer.
client base.
They have the relationships. So for them, it's typically easier to sell. So it just extends the sales team and accelerates the cycle. But also from an industry perspective, given our limited resources, we need to focus on a few industries because we now have a sales team of in total of 8 people. We can't have experience and expertise in 50 different verticals. You can claim that you have, but no one will believe you. So you need to verticalize a bit. So we started in finance, logistics, and manufacturing because we had our initial install base was primarily located in these industries. We started over there. But then it's very valuable to onboard partners that have specific expertise in other verticals. So you can expand in verticals that are outside your own focus or your own territory, but you don't need to invest yourself in onboarding the skills. So that's one thing. But also on a delivery point of view, we have what they call a high-touch SaaS solution. So there's still some implementation configuration work to be done. There's actually some sort of project plan that you need to build around the implementation. And if we would need to scale our delivery team at the same pace that we are trying or aiming to onboard customers, then our business model wouldn't be as attractive for investors as it is today, because we just would need to onboard like a lot of project managers and pre-sales consultants and product specialists, etc. And we will be onboarding them, but not at the same pace. So we try to redistribute our implementation work as well towards people or towards partners. And that's actually where the value is for them. A lot of these companies are service driven. They want to sell without. I'm not trying to put this like too blunt, but they try to sell people and hours of work, and they can do so by selling our license. There is an implementation project around it, and that's something where the actual value is for our partners. So both to scale our delivery team as to scale our sales team, and also expand in terms of verticals and later on in terms of geography. That's the reason why, as of end of 2022, we want more than 60% of our new revenue to come through partners. That's the metric that we've put on.
All right. Well, I love that. Maybe continue on the future ambition of Metamaze, because you already mentioned it earlier. You know, the idea is now to really become a leader of, or at least have proven that it is a model that works in the Benelux, and then you want to internationalize the concept, I imagine. But can you maybe just tell it from yourself more in detail? What's the ambition for Metamaze, and where do you want to go, and when?
Well, the ambition is that we are already active in 6 countries. That's not like on a structural level. We don't have any offices outside of Belgium yet. But we did encounter a few opportunities. We have a customer in Singapore, we have a customer in the UK, in Luxembourg, etc. So that's more like on an opportunistic approach that we have these customers. And actually, if we still have time, I want to come back on the opportunistic side of things, because that's one of the biggest lessons I learned as well. But we want to do this more structurally as of 2023. So the Series A that we're planning beginning of next year, the means of that actually will be primarily used for internationalization, to go international, to duplicate what we've done in Belgium. And we hope that by the end of this year, we have like a very nice blueprint of what actually works. And of course, you always need to modify and adapt locally. But then we want to actually replicate it outside of Belgium, outside of the Benelux. We are looking at 2 main regions, still exploring which one to focus on first, because again, unfortunately, no unlimited resources, so we need to make a decision. But we're looking into the Nordics because of their open mind approach into embracing startups not from within their own region. We've had a lot of discussions with prospects and customers in that region already, and we really feel that they're open to work with Belgium-based startups. They don't feel like they should actually position their own startups in front of ours. That's one thing. Also on a competition level, there's not that much competition in that region than there is in the rest of Europe. And then the other market that we're looking into is North America. Of course, everyone is looking into that market, but for us as well, what makes it interesting for us is that it's like for a lot of other companies, it's a very uniform market. There's one primary language. It's very big, a lot of potential. Our main industry or vertical that we focus on is financial services. You can't find a bigger financial services district than you have in, for example, New York. So that's in terms of uniformity of the market, and then in terms of how it is concentrated in specific locations in the US, makes it very attractive to us as well.
Yeah. No, I can see why. All right, definitely interesting. Let's go back to what you said earlier about the opportunistic lesson that you had, because now you kind of made me curious.
Yeah, I think that's also one of the things that we've experienced in the beginning or in the early days of a company. You're always opportunistic. So you encounter an opportunity and you say like, it's maybe not like a 100% fit, but at least we can cover like 60% of the functionality. So maybe we should still do it, and then we'll build the rest around it, and we'll try to make our product fit in the case that the customer has.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always a bad idea. It's always a bad idea how attractive the money seems, or how much annual recurring revenue you can onboard. It's always a bad idea to be too opportunistic, because actually what you're doing is you're not onboarding annual recurring revenue, you're onboarding churn, but you just don't realize it yet. And that's something that we have noticed, that we pushed some customers in the past to, although we actually felt that they might not have been ready yet, for different reasons, could be on a technology level, could be on a legal level, could be for anything, but that they're actually not ready yet. We tried to push them to sign anyway, and we would prove that our technology works, and which it does, that our technology actually works. But in the end, after 1 year, when you need to renew the contract, the customer realizes like, hey, it's great technology, it works perfectly, it's actually what we need, but still we're not ready yet. We can't integrate, we don't have the resources to start using it yet. Wow. So we need to cancel the contract. And that's when you are actually realizing that you didn't onboard any recurring revenue, you onboarded churn. And also for projects, the other thing that I mentioned earlier, building too much custom things around a product that you're trying to standardize is also, it's a rabbit hole, and you don't want to go down the rabbit hole, because in the end it will come back to bite you in the ass. And that's something that we realized, and that we have become way more, I would say, vigilant for ourselves not to do that. And we dare to say no more often than we did in the past. In the past we just like, can the customer bring revenue? Can the customer bring a new logo? Okay, let's do it and we'll fix it. And we are stepping away from that approach, because having this order intake in year one, it's nice to show to your investors. But the next year you need to raise additional funds, a bigger round, you need more money, and then you need to go back to these same investors saying that you lost the customers that you onboarded the year before, which gives like an indication that your model is not sustainable, but actually it's just because you onboarded your own customer, you onboarded your own project. And I myself, I'm to blame a lot for the opportunistic things or deals that we made in the past, and we learned a lot from it. We generated cash as well. Customers are still happy, but yeah, you actually, it's something you push forward a churn, and you keep on pushing it forward until it's inevitable, and then the churn is there, and then you need to report it, and that's something that's just not fun to do. So it's sometimes better to say no and say, okay, we'll come back in a year or two when you are ready to sign, and when our product maybe is more mature, so that we can fully support your case without building custom things around it, than to onboard it too fast.
Yeah, key message is there to say no. But don't you think that in some way, or in some circumstances, it could go also the other way, that you're not really sure that there is a perfect match, but maybe it's also interesting to discover what else we could bring in to future companies, to future clients, and by doing that one project, you can maybe. So I'm just saying, maybe you can have luck on the one hand, but you can also have bad luck. What's then probably your case. And I'm just questioning, is that really a bad thing what you did, or was it just a great lesson that you had to go through?
No, it's a great lesson, and we'll probably do it again. Because I say like, don't be opportunistic, but if tomorrow like a big deal comes by and we think that it might be interesting, then probably we'll think about it more thoroughly than we did in the past. But we'll probably do it again. Because indeed it can also lead to some insights that you didn't get before, but you just need to realize, you need to think about it before you do it. Don't just say yes because there's a big license or a big logo that you want to onboard. Think about it thoroughly, and also think about the risks, because the big risk for us, or I think for any company, is that you build a solution too much towards one customer or too much towards one industry, and it depends on what your strategy is, but we want to stay generic and industry agnostic. And if you then just listen too much to one customer because they are giving you a big check, you risk losing your scalability to the other industries that you actually want to focus on. So no, it's not a bad thing. Everyone is opportunistic. I think I've talked about to a lot of other companies and startups, and they all report the same. Like, of course, we're opportunistic. We need to validate. We need to try and test.
And it
test
also
whatever
depends
happens.
where you are in the phase of your startup scale up, right? Because if you're really early at the beginning, I think it's okay to make those mistakes. You want to make those mistakes because that's where you learn the most of it. Once you are beyond the product market fit and you know it's ready to scale, there maybe indeed you need to be more critical in what you do and what you don't do.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thank you so much, Niels, for being on the show. If people want to find out more about you, about Metamaze, where do you send them to?
If they want to find out more about me, they can send me an email. It will be fun conversations. If they want to find out more about Metamaze, they can of course visit the website www.metamaze.eu or follow us on LinkedIn on the socials. Feel free to reach out. My contact details are on the website as well. So if you have any questions, of course, feel free. And thanks for having me, Dylan, on the show. It was
Perfect. Before you go, Niels, I have an ultimate question for you. A question that we ask everyone that's being on the show. If Niels was a brand, what would it stand for?
That's a good question. If Niels was a brand, what would it stand for? Like in terms of a value, you mean? Eh? In terms of what value it's, I think.
Go ahead.
I think it would be like again might be very cliche, but hungry, but not in a way like hungry, but ambitious and just
driven,
keep on pushing, driven, keep on pushing and just make it happen. I think that's something that
that's definitely a good one.
Most.
I'll take it.
Okay, great.
Again, thank you, Niels, so much for your contribution to the show. I wish you a happy birthday again, and of course a lot of success with Metamaze.
Thanks for having me. Bye bye.